Cyrus cylinder does not say what you expect it to say. Let's just start right there. The Cyrus cylinder is supposedly the decree given by the Persian, now we're moving down into the Persian period, the Persian king Cyrus, that allows all of the exiled Jews to return to Jerusalem.
This is probably the first moment in history that we know of a ruler thinking about how he's going to manage a multicultural state.
For centuries, Islam has confidently claimed that the Bible cannot be trusted, that its stories were changed, rewritten, or corrupted over time, and that Israel's connection to Jerusalem was exaggerated or reshaped long after the events themselves. According to Islamic teaching, earlier scriptures lost their original message, and later revelation was needed to correct history itself. But what happens when history speaks before Islam ever existed? What happens when an ancient king, who never heard of the Bible and lived more than 1,000 years before the Quran, leaves behind a physical record that quietly confirms the Bible's account of Israel, Jerusalem, exile, and restoration? That is exactly what happened with a small clay object discovered beneath the ruins of Babylon. It was not written by prophets. It was not preserved by priests. It was not copied by scribes trying to defend a faith. It was written by an emperor, and once it was translated, it created a problem that theology alone could not solve. This is the story of the Cyrus cylinder. Before we uncover what this object actually says and why it matters so deeply, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel. Now, let us step back into the ancient world. By the early 6th century BC, Israel's future looked finished. Jerusalem had been conquered by Babylon, its walls torn down, and its temple burned to the ground. The people of Judah were taken far from their land and forced to live in exile among foreigners. Empires often erased defeated nations completely, removing their identity and memory. From a purely political perspective, Israel should have disappeared. Yet the Hebrew Bible recorded something extraordinary. It said the exile would end. It said the people would return. It said Jerusalem would be rebuilt. It even claimed that a foreign king, not an Israelite ruler, would authorize it. The prophet Isaiah recorded it with striking clarity, declaring, "That confirmeth the word of his servant, and performeth the counsel of his messengers. That saith to Jerusalem, Thou shalt be inhabited, and to the cities of Judah, Ye shall be built, and I will raise up the decayed places thereof." Isaiah 44:26. Later critics, including Islamic scholars, argued that these texts must have been edited after the events occurred. According to this view, Jewish writers reshaped history to fit what eventually happened, giving the illusion of prophecy and divine planning. That argument only works if there is no independent evidence. Then archaeology uncovered one. In 539 BC, Babylon fell to the Persian king Cyrus II, known to history as Cyrus the Great. Unlike previous conquerors, Cyrus entered Babylon with minimal violence. Instead of destroying the city, he preserved it. Instead of humiliating its people, he presented himself as a restorer. Cyrus ruled differently. He believed stability came from respecting local religions and returning displaced peoples to their ancestral lands. This policy was unprecedented in the ancient world. Cyrus did not keep this policy secret. He ordered it to be recorded publicly. In the year 1879, an archaeologist named Hormuzd Rassam, working on behalf of the British Museum, was excavating the ruins of ancient Babylon in what is now modern-day Iraq. Near the remains of the Esagila Temple, the central religious complex of Babylon, Rassam uncovered fragments of a small clay cylinder inscribed with cuneiform writing. At first, the object did not seem remarkable. Clay cylinders were common in Mesopotamia. But when scholars began translating the inscription, they realized they were reading an official royal proclamation from the time of Cyrus himself. This object had been buried for over 2,000 years. It had never been influenced by Jewish tradition, Christian theology, or Islamic belief. It came from Persia. The cylinder begins by criticizing Babylon's previous ruler for mistreating the people and angering the gods. Cyrus then presents himself as a chosen ruler who brought peace and order. Then come the lines that matter most. Cyrus declares, "I return to these sacred cities on the other side of the Tigris, the sanctuaries of which have been ruins for a long time, the images which used to live therein, and I established for them permanent sanctuaries." And then he says, "I gathered all their inhabitants and returned them to their dwellings." This is not symbolic language, it is administrative policy. Cyrus is describing the reversal of exile. Long before Hormuzd-Rassam ever lifted a shovel, the Bible had already told this story. The book of Ezra records a decree by Cyrus allowing the Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. It reads, "Thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth. Whoever is among you of all his people, may his God be with him, and let him go up to Jerusalem and rebuild the house of the Lord." Even more astonishing, the prophet Isaiah names Cyrus by name long before he was born, calling him God's anointed instrument. At the time, critics dismissed this as religious exaggeration. Then archaeology spoke. Islam teaches that the Bible was altered and that its historical narratives cannot be fully trusted. But the Cyrus cylinder forces a direct question. How did the Bible accurately preserve the imperial policy of a Persian king whose proclamation was buried and forgotten for centuries? The cylinder confirms that Israel was a real people in exile, that Jerusalem was a recognized city tied to that people, and that a foreign emperor officially sanctioned their return and the rebuilding of their sacred center. These facts are not Jewish theology, they are Persian history. Islam emerged more than 1,000 years later. It cannot erase earlier physical evidence. The cylinder makes it clear that ancient empires recognized specific homelands as belonging to specific peoples. The Jewish return only makes sense if Jerusalem already held deep religious and historical significance for Israel. Jerusalem was not claimed later. It was restored because it already mattered. The Bible did not invent this connection, it recorded it. Cyrus was not a follower of Israel's God. He did not believe in the Torah. He was not trying to fulfill prophecy, yet his actions aligned with the biblical record in remarkable detail. This is devastating for claims that the Bible's history was fabricated or reshaped. Jewish scribes did not write Persian royal propaganda. They preserved their own history, which archaeology later confirmed independently. The Cyrus cylinder does not attack Islam emotionally. It challenges it historically. It shows that the Bible's account of Israel, Jerusalem, exile, and restoration rests on real events acknowledged by the most powerful empire of the ancient world. Belief can be debated. Theology can differ. History, however, remains fixed. The Cyrus cylinder is small, cracked, and unimpressive to the eye. Yet it carries a truth that arguments cannot silence. It confirms that Israel's story was not invented later, that Jerusalem was not claimed retroactively, and that the Bible preserved accurate history long before archaeology rediscovered it. Sometimes truth does not arrive through debate or doctrine. Sometimes it is dug out of the ground. If you found this exploration fascinating and easy to understand, remember to subscribe and stay with us. There are still many ancient voices waiting beneath the soil, and some of them speak louder than words ever could.